So,
Absolutely. Very, very poignant
yeah,
reminder that, such a day, the United States is asking Taliban not to celebrate 9/11 as a sign of victory. It's a very sad turn of events. But let me, for the
sure, go ahead.
general public, introduce you,
Okay.
somebody who has been at the forefront of advocating separation of religion and state. You've opposed Sharia, and you've advocated for a liberal, progressive form of Islam. You have obviously had criticism come from all sorts of people across from the Muslim community, and also other liberal and conservative groups who are probably a little bit reluctant to admit your point of view. You have always called yourself an Indian born in Pakistan and a Punjabi born into Islam, and now your opinion obviously has arrived at a juncture where there is all sorts of negotiations happening with the crudest form that is exhibited by Taliban. So how do you see this, Tarek? And what you predicted this? I know you have, that there has been backroom dealings happening all over ever since Trump started negotiating in Qatar. I know you've talked about it. So how are
Well,
you feeling today on 9/11 with what's happening?
well, it's remarkable that uh, we are observing the 20th anniversary by rewarding those who carried it out,
Yeah.
and then pretending that it somehow were planes that crashed into it. Planes didn't crash. Planes are told what to do. Pilots crash, and those pilots were motivated by the notion of supremacy of Islam over the rest of humanity. And it is astonishing that you could listen to 20 years of people talking about 9/11. Nobody ever talks about what motivated these men to do what they did. Countries didn't motivate them. Money was not their motivation. They wanted to die. So what would they do with the money? They didn't have to conquer anything. They simply had to kill and shake up and destroy uh, the the symbols of American power, and that had already been done. The World Trade Center had already been attacked a few years earlier, and even till today, you listen to the speeches, you listen to the eyewitnesses. It's as if some space uh, out of space characters did that, and people have been traumatized by it. The people who did it live in the United States. You invite them, you put them there. They are in every university. They are wherever there's a Pakistani consulate, there is the Taliban, there is the Al Qaeda. And I mean, just because you give different brand names to a pop drink, it remains a cola, diet cola or zero cola, or, there are tens of these. But when you start pretending that you've discovered what went wrong, and you're lying to yourself, it's not even that there are 3, 4 other people in the room. When you are convinced that you will refuse to address what motivated people to die. You've never, in 20 years, nobody has sat down and said, so why would anyone want to do it this way? It's not an individual event like the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi, or, so many things we've seen with the Tamil Tigers liberation movement or the Japanese harakiri. They all had a motivation in what they thought was, or the Soviet fighters, the communist fighters in Ukraine and Russia, who would lie down before German tanks and blow them up in the Second World War. No, this was for nothing. They would accomplish absolutely nothing other than a trip to paradise, where they were promised that there will be an orgy of sex with tens of thousands of women of different sort, and there will be, And that too, if you sincerely believe it, then you're nuts. But anyway, one should have looked into the notion of why Muslims have first cousin marriages and is it affecting us? Has there been a physiological damaging of an entire people that you simply can be aroused into a state of mind where death is the beginning of life? So nobody discussed this. And I'll tell you, it's not just the United States. I don't think India discussed it after the Bombay attacks or, suicide bombings elsewhere in the country. People just look the other way. They don't want to offend somebody else. So life goes on, and this great challenge the world faces at the hands of what is Islamism, what has been created by the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, which is reflected in India by the Jamaat Islami, and elsewhere by far more extremist versions of Jamaat Islami. Looks like a Boy Scout group compared to the Deobandis from India. You also have to understand that all these extremists originate their ideological thinking from India, which is the Deoband madrasa that the British established in 1860 after Ghadar, so that the Muslims could be placated and put them over there, let every Muslim child go for 3, 4, 5 years to get brainwashed and sexually assaulted by mullahs, and life will be happy. And that's the end result was partition of India, which is one of the greatest calamities committed by this ideology. Pakistan is the first Islamic state ever in human history. There has never been an Islamic state. There have been caliphates that have been colonial rulers. For example, the Turks ruled over the Arabs for 600 years. And we talk of 9/11. Very few people understand that it was 9/11, 1683, that the Turks were finally defeated at the gates of Vienna by the armies of Poland and
the Polish king.
And ever since, that was the westward extreme that Turkish forces came to establish Islam in Europe. And since that day, they had to withdraw slowly away from the Balkans, and now you barely have a few hundred square miles on the European side, which is governed by Turkey. But at every stage, the issue is nobody has tried to, in a neutral form. I know there is enough hatred of Muslims that one can whip up a whole bunch of folks in the January, insani nahi, that doesn't solve any problem. Till you understand that this is an ideological movement that is motivated by religion and for which death is the beginning of life, then you would understand.
Let me pause you there, because this spectacular comeback by the leadership of the Islamic world is a case study in itself. The West studies these case studies, at least in academic format, but it hasn't done so. It just let let the notion seep in that these people kill each other. ये लोग एक दूसरे को कत्ल करते हैं, but they will never have a cogent strategy to make a comeback. This is a comeback. We have to admit that whoever was...
All of Iran has disappeared, sir. All of Egyptian civilization has disappeared. The only ancient civilization that survived this onslaught of 1,000 years was Hindustan. And that too because the southern part of India, which I call monsoon Muslims, were a completely different set of people who were traders. The Arabs used to trade with the Malabaris and the Coromandel coast long before they became Muslim, So those are two different areas we see. The point in the present context is that you have hundreds of millions of people who genuinely believe that the whole purpose of life, which is what we call Roz-e-Qayamat, end of times, and then we take our transit flights connected to paradise, it depends on the destruction of India, Ghazwa Hind as it is called. Every Hindu has to die or convert, or every Hindu temple has to be leveled. That is what Ghazwa Hind is. Otherwise, Hind doesn't come up. They say that the end of times will come when two armies will arise. One will go to Rome, which is equivalent to Europe, and the other will head towards India. And once these two have destroyed the West and Hindustan, there will be the glorious rule of Islam over the world. And once that is done, khatam, qayamat, and life will end. So whereas the rest of humanity wants to improve life and say that I wish to get ahead the way the early Arab civilizations did. I mean, just after Prophet Muhammad's death, you see the Arabs going everywhere with success stories, not just Muslim Arabs, atheist Arabs like Ibn Rushd or Kindi, or those who went to Spain. Arab society created incredible intellectual wisdom in medicine, everything. The Turks, on the other hand, in 600 years, did not produce a single book to be read by anyone. And they were facing the Greeks, who had written everything that we know from ancient times and had gone into the Socrates' nature of studying gods to people, to behavior, to Plato, and everything. We have not yet, in the modern sense, understood that the best years of Muslim living, Renaissance or ordinary living, the best days of our life were from 1850 to 1950. The colonial period is the best time when a Muslim was not subject to horror at the hands of his mullahs. So whether you look at Egypt, in Cairo, or in Kabul, or in Lahore, or you go to Kuala Lumpur or Turkey, Muslims were like anybody else. The word hijab had not yet been invented. Maybe in Delhi, every woman was, in old Delhi, enslaved in a burqa, but that too, you will not believe it, used to be in a form where the face, you could lift it at the back and the face would be seen. There was a thing called the shuttlecock burqa, which looked like a shuttlecock in badminton, which was white. Then the black burqa used to have the middle class Muslim woman. There were two shades that you could forward, and it was perfectly acceptable for my mom, as soon as she was away from home, to take both of those and throw her at her back. I didn't even see hijab. The dupatta, on the other hand, was worn by Hindus, Christians, Zoroastrians, everybody, because it is a very handy piece of attire. You know, you can wear it over your breast, your head, you can tie things into it. Your child can also be tied up around your waist. Now the word dupatta has disappeared because the whole notion of political Islam puts the woman in hijab as one of the soldiers. So anytime in the West, where I live in Toronto, boom, a woman comes in a hijab, she's a soldier. The member of Congress, she is wearing attire that no one in her family ever wore. For example, the Somalis have their own hairstyle. Now they copy and wear what the Muslim Brotherhood says to wear. So it's the uniform of the Muslim Brotherhood. They are like troops that went out, for example, to be wives of ISIS. In Tunisia, there are 26,000 women who came back pregnant because they went there to serve the jihadis. So, and in there, you won't believe it, how horrifying this whole ideology is that the Indian Pakistani Muslim was told, you can't get these women to sleep around because you are Hindi. You go and find your own third class, because an Arab woman cannot be married to a dark-skinned Indian. Hindi, dafa ho jao yahan se. And so the Indian Pakistani ISIS jihadi was only asked to cook or clean toilets. Nobody gave them a gun. No. And you were a piece of crap, you know. And they were very happy with that they were being treated like crap, because the whole concept coming from aapke Deoband was ideological books that I have here that say that for a non-Arab to consider himself equal to an Arab is a sin.
So the Quraysh tribe, you're kind of segueing into what has been a sneaking suspicion, at least amongst some of the intellectuals, is that there was some thinking going on, right? And you see plastered across the mainstream media, at least in the United States, which is controlled by the establishment, giving due credit to Deoband all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
This victory is being handed over to Deoband.
It is.
So kind of throw some light on what the Chatterati world is saying, and the kind of exuberance they're feeling with this victory right
this
now.
Great discovery that they've made, because they created the English, the British know that this is how, because let me, for perhaps you might not know that, for example, in Pakistan, most Punjabi Muslims are from the Barelvi school of thought. Achha, in our family side, the people who are Barelvi, they would not even dream of this whole nonsense of jihad. Maybe they might be motivated by a commitment to Allah and Islam and Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, everything. But this notion that it is your duty to destroy this world, and that kafir where you live, imagine the brilliance of the British. They created an institution after 1857 War of Independence, that the Muslim is now there not to fight the British, but to fight the Hindu. तो मजा आ गया ना ये तो religion दिया, बोला आपको सब मिले, scholarship भी मिलेगा, सब कुछ, you will have the world to yourself. You will even get children to sexualize, because there was no criminal charge for that. It is called bachabazi in our yani Western Afghan Pakistan language, that a guy gets married and the bride family has to bring a boy as well. I've seen that, and to my shock, in some places. So the British set this aside, then tell them you're a martial race. So they not only get them to do the dirty work, but then make them die for themselves. So chalo Punjab and frontier say everybody's going, these are martial races. Marathas could destroy the Mughal Empire. No, you're not martial race enough. And neither are the Rajputs. Nobody else is. Gurkhas ko bana diya, aur ye Punjabiyon ko bana diya Pathan.
Sikh ko bana diya.
Sikh ko bana diya. Sikh, they start believing in themselves. First World War. My grandfather was a colonel in the First World War. but he was smart enough to go through the French Free Forces, you know. Anybody could join the Free French. And so he stayed back and married my grandmother, who was also French, and settled in Mumbai. But the notion that you have to be, I use an expression sometimes when people say, but you're not really a Muslim. I say that is because I'm not ugly enough to be considered authentic Muslim. So if I'm unshaved for 15 days, if my pajama is up and my kurta is down and my slippers are torn, you know, unworthy of any appreciation, he is so damaged in his looks, in his attitude, in how he walks, what he scratches when he walks, everything, he fits the bill. Bhai Sahib, America is happy. Look how America brought back the Taliban to spit on itself. Now it's
Exactly.
appealing to the Taliban, okay, not on 9/11, please. Besharam. We in Urdu we say behaya log.
क्या ये दोकलापन है, ये भोलापन है, या चालाकी है, या तीनों मिलके है?
नहीं, मैं आपको बताऊं क्या. आप दुनिया में you cannot meet another devious, conniving truth turners than the Punjabi Muslim who pretends to have Urdu as his mother tongue. It's a very complex identity. You will never meet someone from Tamil Nadu saying, well, actually I'm Tamil, but I'm more fluent in Malayali. It's not possible. Some Bengali coming and saying, I speak fluent Kashmiri, but actually I'm Bengali. It's only in Pakistan where the Punjabi hates his mother tongue and beats his children if they speak it. And they say, "Main tenu English school bheja, now you are speaking in Punjabi." Yani Punjabi is something to be despised. It is the language of the sweeper or the rickshaw driver or something like that. No other place on earth has this problem, sir. No Somali is embarrassed about speaking Somali. No Iranian, no Cambodian, no Vietnamese, no one except those almost 150 million people on the western border of India who simply hate themselves. They live in Lahore and they don't know that Lahore is the city, the son of Lord Rama. वो ना केश को जानते ना लव को जानते. They have invented their own identity, which is completely fake, which is Turkish or Arab. I've been to the old city and I've asked people, there are you 100 generation in Lahore. How are you Arab? For goodness sake. You can say, we converted to Islam. That is fine, but you are essentially Punjabi. You are from these lands. You have to be loyal, rooted to this place, not Turkmenistan. But you will notice that even in India, there are people with Sayyid, Bakwi, and Rizvi, and there's a whole hierarchy of.
I'm from Hyderabad. I'm from Hyderabad, so I know what you're talking about.
The Qurayshis are the F-16 of Muslims.
So let's also talk about the present day in terms of what this has done to the psyche, and also the forms of evolving jihad, and also let's also segue that into the penetration. You've talked about this many million times. What that will look like, at least for those who are listening and tuning into the program, to be watchful about.
Okay, whether someone likes it or not, whether someone is of Christian, Hindu, Zoroastrian, kuch bhi ho, the truth always reigns supreme. You might have an opinion, but the truth is that Hindustan is from Mohenjo-daro. It is not from Makkah. It is not from Turkey. It is not. It is 5,000-year-old city living on the Indus, where after 200 years of research, you could not find a single bow and arrow. Civilized place, streets, houses, two-story, public toilets, 5,000-year-old on the Indus River. That is the origin of Hindustan. First, we need to be clear. This Ganga Jamna Tehzeeb has to be shelved because that is a made in India project by Mr. Nehru and his friends. Okay, after losing the Indus, how can you be India? The word Sindhu, Hindu, Indu, Indus is sab Pakistan mein. So you created Ganga Jamna Tehzeeb. Arey bhai, Ganga Jamna Tehzeeb hogi, but that is where the Lodhis came. That is where Babur came to kill Lodhis. That is why Taimur came and built pyramids of the skulls of Hindus. 50 skulls per pyramid, and it was at every course. Nobody's teaching Indians that history. Nobody's teaching Pakistanis that history. And so how long will you lie to people who want to know? Now, what is happening else with this is that India's ability to stand in the Committee of Nations as worthy of being in the Security Council is hampered by one fact, that whereas the Chinese gave 14 million dead to defeat the Axis powers, we have a very complex history of Netaji fighting on the side of Hitler, and then our armies fighting the Indian National Army. So it's probably one of the only countries in the world where both Hitler and Israel are admired. And I often find that very funny. The Pakistanis have religious reasons to hate every Jew. But what reason would an Indian have to side with Hitler other than Netaji made a mistake and left 5,000 of the INA forces in Europe when he came to Andaman Islands and went to the Japanese side. All that set aside, now India's next step is to be in the Security Council. It cannot be if 52 countries have a mafia controlling the UNHCR. There is one Hindu country. And even in that one Hindu country, the Hindu says, well, actually, it is not a Hindu country. Savarkar was a great, like he's looked down upon. Anybody who says Hindu or uses the word Hindutva becomes right-wing. I profess to be a believer in Hindutva, although my leaning is very left of center. And I think Savarkar was a freedom fighter. Why would Indians demean someone who spent time in the Andaman Islands? Kala pani bolte the. This is astonishing that we will choose to alter history simply to make the religion of the majority a burden. So you're saying, but he's a practicing Hindu, therefore he must be right-wing. Therefore, he's a fascist. And so nowadays, I don't know if you're aware or not, in America and Canada, there is this campaign against India and Hindus that Hindutva is as if the Taliban are Hindutva. And very little opposition to it, mind you. I don't know why Hindu Americans are not as vocal as the member of Congress who used to be the woman from Honolulu. She was member of the Congress, Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard.
I tell you, she represents Indian civilization much better than all of us put together, because she's unburdened by any apologetic behavior. She said this, and people just in front of my house, they are film producers, and both of them are Hindu, they are white, and I didn't even know they had an ashram in their house, where when I was in hospital with cancer, they didn't even tell me that they were having services for me, for praying for my health. And I couldn't imagine that two white people, film producers in Hollywood, would be Hindu. But people have studied from the time Vivekananda came here and the World Council of Religions took place. There is something about that religion that motivates people to a calmness. And the thing, where does yoga come from? It's not made by some Japanese multinational like Sanyo or something. It's indigenous to us. We are from Hindustan. We never invaded any country. The Chola dynasty spread right up to, I think, even Vietnam and Cambodia. The biggest Hindu temple is in.
Its vassals were in the Indonesian archipelago. Yeah. Correct. Yes.
So we didn't send an army. People came to us and said, "What is this? every page of the Quran has a numbering system, which is from the Hindus.
Yeah.
The Arabs didn't have an Arabic numeral system. When I tell this, I often conduct Hindu-Muslim marriages as well, which some people call love jihad, but I consider it the highest form of existence because you have to face up to so much opposition. I think my best thing I've ever done is I've done 3 marriages where both the couples have come to me and said, "Uncle, nobody's accepting us." I said, "Okay, I'll conduct it, because in Islam there is no service, by the way. You just simply have to ask. If a man and a woman say we are married, they are married. No mullah involved. Honest to God, it is a wonderful place for people to be free. That is why the early Arabs became Muslim. There's no mullah. Ever since the mullah came in, nightmares began. But people want to live together. They're both of Indian ancestry. I am sure there are people who tell कि शादी करो और फिर उसको मुसलमान बनाओ, ताकि आई हैव हर्ड दिस कि ज्यादा मुसलमान होंगे तो फिर एक दिन हिंदुस्तान पे हमारा कब्जा होगा. अरे भाई, नहीं होगा. तुम मार्स पे नहीं जाओगे. In 500 years we haven't made a pin. We can't manufacture shoes. So the pyramid, the structure that is shown behind you, that temple, that was made, carved out of a stone. You didn't bring stones to carve it. This is unheard of anywhere in the world, that you take a mountain and you carve it and turn it hundreds or thousands of years ago and make it into a temple. We don't have to be apologetic about anything. ठीक है, गरीब हो गए तो क्या है?
So what is your take, Tarek? You've talked about different sorts of jihad in the past. Of there's now obviously the most popular term is love jihad.
That is a diversion, sir. That is a diversion.
So can you talk about the actual scriptural types of jihad? Are there any?
The scriptural jihad is very simply said the commitment to Islam to fight to convert the non-Muslim and the polytheist, inviting that person into the fold of Islam or fighting them to eliminate polytheism. But the same book says that the greater jihad is not that. It is to kill your own ego. That is the greater jihad. You tell me one Pakistani Indian Muslim, maybe that Punjabi poet Bulle Shah and some Sindhi poets talked about ke tu ki jaane main kaun. I'm reducing myself to zero. Only then I can be human being. This philosophy is there, but it's no longer. Jihad, when you hear it, it means one thing: an attack on non-Muslims and polytheists are the primary. Then there are second categories of the Christian and the Jew that has to be tackled in this. But the polytheists, and without blinking an eye, all Muslims are walking around a stone Kaaba, which they condemn the Hindus to do. The only difference is that I don't know which idiot did it, but they changed the movement around the Kaaba to counterclockwise. Now, nothing in this universe works counterclockwise, except the Muslim worship of God. मैं तो वहां जाके कहा कि भाई ये उल्टा कर रहे हो, इसमें रिवर्स गियर में you can't win a car race.
So you have experimented with certain esoteric thoughts in the past, at least looked at them. You've kind of delved into so many things, right? So talk about it, Tarek. I feel sometimes in analyzing, आप अपनी बात नहीं कहते हो जो आपने experience किया है.
देखिए,
you know what I'm saying?
When I was a student, I went to a Catholic school, but I used to go to my neighborhood mosque 5 times a day without anyone telling me, and pray over there. And people used to think he's crazy, because cricket match chhod ke ja raha hai namaz padhne, but pagal, they would say to me. But I spent a childhood of great poverty. After my parents moved from India, we saw periods where we didn't have food to eat, you know, and it affected us quite a bit, because back in India, as I hear, my grandfather's industry is still there. It's called the Oxychloride Flooring Company. But as a child, you can't imagine if you're from the middle class and you are in abject poverty. You are stunted when you figure out that today I don't have, mom doesn't have money to send me to take the bus to school. So you have to walk. Those things affect you if you're in your early teens and you see all around you. I went to a wonderful Catholic school. Family friends had managed, even my school principal, who recently passed away. If I was ever short of school fees, I was never made to realize. He would arrange for it. So I saw that issue, and I couldn't figure out why people were poor. What sort of a God is sitting there asking us to do this and that, and do this for me? And a simple case of people not having food to eat is beyond him. He can create humanity and 50 million animal sorts and insects and viruses and whatever. So for a long time, I just stopped having any belief system at all. But I also then, my first reading of Hinduism came from my wife. Long before we got married, we were in university together. And she asked me about certain things till I realized, what? I know absolutely nothing. This is supposed to be. So I start, my first book that I took from my father to read about India was by Savarkar. This is the 1857 War of Independence.
Right.
I didn't know this guy is controversial, but I just needed to know. And I realized when I was 12, 13, कि हम सब हिंदू हैं. बाद में कोई मुसलमान हो गया हो, but all our mothers are Hindus. And then you say, माँ के पैर के नीचे जन्नत है. अरे भाई जन्नत है और वो हिंदू है, तो आप एंटी हिंदू किस लिए हो गए? I don't think people think like that. You are not making choices. Certain things happen, you're in those circumstances, and you need to, in the given circumstances, you need to make yourself strong enough to do the positive thing, which is to go against the stream of the river. नीचे तो सभी जाते हैं, गंगा में किश्ती डाली और चले गए नीचे ब्रह्मपुत्र, बांग्लादेश तक पहुंच जाएंगे आप. बांग्लादेश से किश्ती लेके जाइए और ऊपर हिमालय पे, तब बात बनती है ना.
So I think you should reclassify yourself as a believing atheist, Tarek.
मतलब एथियस्ट भी मैंने देखा 2 मिनट में एक्सीडेंट होता है तो हाथ जोड़ देते. मेरे बड़े एथियस्ट फ्रेंड, अभी एक एथियस्ट मर गया, उसका चर्च में. मैंने कहा ये क्या एथियस्ट है यार, ये चर्च के अंदर उसका हो रहा है, बनता कम्युनिस्ट है. फैज अहमद फैज, आपने सुना होगा नाम.
Yes.
मर गए तो मौलवी बुला लिया, दो इनको. अरे ऐसा कैसा एथियस्ट है जो मरने पे मौलवी को बुलाता है? मैंने तो सीधा कह दिया भैया उसमें कि डिक्लासिफाई कर दो, डालो नहीं. वो है क्रिमेशन सेंटर, बिल्कुल यहीं पड़ा हुआ, आपको दिखा भी दूंगा. मैंने ये रखा हुआ. ये है आयरीन क्रिमेशन सेंटर में लिखा है प्लान नाउ देन एंजॉय लाइफ. मैंने कहा ये ठीक है, हमको छोटी सी लकड़ी उकड़ी करके जला देना, ऐश हो तो पीछे डाल देना, किसी पौधे वौधे में उग जाएंगे अगले जन्म में. लेकिन ये इतने बड़े इश्यूज लेके दुनिया डिवाइड हुई भी है. मेरे तो एक सिंपल है भाई, जमीन वैसे ही नहीं है हमारे पास, कम है. उसमें मरने के बाद भी 1.5 गज की जमीन इधर उधर से देखे ना भाई, जान छोड़ो, अब खत्म हो गया. समुंदर में डालो या अपनी आपको हिंदू स्टाइल में गेट बरीड, जगह की तो इकोनॉमी चलाओ ना. तो दैट
In
इज.
the interest of time, I know I love talking to
आई
you
एम सॉरी,
for
आई
a long,
एम
long
गेटिंग
time.
कैरीड अवे.
In the interest of time, there's questions coming in. Usme, one question is that what will the repercussions of what has happened in Afghanistan be short term in India? That's question number one.
It's very serious. I am not the only one who has observed that in India there was an air of triumphalism and happiness and joy amongst many centers. I have at least recordings of two, in fact, four Muslim imams who have celebrated that victory. That led to Nasiruddin Shah coming up with a rebuttal, almost making a major shift in how he looked at Hindustan. And he said something very brave, कि हिंदुस्तान का तो इस्लाम मुख्तलिफ है. किसी ने आज सुबह मुझे पूछा कि how, what do you mean? I said, कभी किसी मुसलमान को अरब को बिरयानी खाते देखा आपने? हमारे इस्लाम में बिरयानी है, पाया है, मच्छी है, भिंडी है, करेला है. आप उधर चले जाइए ईरान में, सिवाय उबले हुए अंडे अच्छे चावल के ऊपर और कुछ खाता नहीं है. तो हम डिफरेंट हैं भाई. हम थे हिंदू, उससे मुसलमान हुए. कोई ऐसा तो नहीं हुआ कि रिवर्स हुआ हो. So we, all our genes, everything is linked up. So लेकिन अब जो हुआ उसका नुकसान ये है और थ्रेट ये है कि इनको शहादत, जिसे एक तो हिंदुस्तान में वर्ड शहीद आप लोग यूज करते हैं, आई एम अस्टॉनिश्ड. शहीद मीन्स somebody who dies killing a kafir in the act of war.
It should be Veer Gati. It should be Veer Gati or something
I know.
Close to that. Yeah.
You cannot call anyone shaheed in the Indian. लेकिन your ministers and early cabinet and education ministers ने सब fraud किया, वो जिना से ज्यादा खराब थे. तो but anyway, this need to be shaheed in their sense is enhanced. This notion that we are, this myth that the Muslim is 10 times more powerful than the Hindu is deeply settled in your brain from childhood. And this victory and catastrophe that America has imposed on itself for a fistful of dollars will go down as a, this entire pact signed and surrendered to the Taliban was done by that Pakistani Afghan agent Zalmay Khalilzad, the American who went through 3 different administrations representing Pakistan's interest in Doha.
Yes.
Not Taliban. The Afghan government was not represented there.
Yes.
इन्होंने बेचा है. And that is why the entire structure of this is that we will now talk about Kashmir. Why they will talk about Kashmir is because China will sponsor them. Iran will sponsor them. China has made treaties with Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran. This triangle to the Arabian Sea, to Balochistan coast, to Gulf of Oman, straight coming down from Hunza and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, you will know the road is coming straight to Gwadar and Karachi.
Yeah.
They have the fisheries in their control. They have all the gold mine assets in Balochistan. The mineral that makes batteries are in lithium is in Afghanistan, and Iran is right there at the mouth of the Persian Gulf. And sadly, I'll add, India has been silent through this.
Yes.
India has played like a, you know, like in field hockey, you have the fullback, and he just stopped, make sure there's no goal on them. Sometimes you need to have center forward and left out and right out who hit the goal. You have to, India has to raise the issue of Balochistan's freedom to put Pakistan and China on their back foot. I cannot understand why they don't do it. आप लोग भूले हैं.
So, Tarek, we're coming up on top of the hour, 2 minutes to go.
Yeah.
I know you've talked about so many of these issues. Hopefully, a book will come out about your life's experiences, and
I'm writing one. It's called The Hindu
yes,
is Not My Enemy,
yes,
but it will come out from in India, inshallah.
yes, yes. Wonderful. Please follow Tarek Fateh on Twitter, Facebook. There's some questions that have come in. I've tried my best to ask them of Tarek. He's a bhandar, satrangi person who's always smiling. Whenever he is in trouble, I always pray for him. Let's all hope and pray that Tarek Fatah has a very long and illustrious life and he serves humanity like he has done for many, many years. Thank you so much, Tarek, for
Thank you,
you
sir.
to take
Jai
your
Hind.
time. Take care of yourself and take care of your family. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Tarek.
much. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Tarek Fateh.
Take care.
It's
Thank you.
always, I always think of you as someone who has given me a second life. My whole
Oh
ideology.
my God.
I can tell you, I was from a family that is, totally leftist, and I basically got very, when I saw his TED talk, is when I first discovered a lot of things, Tarek Fateh ji.
left पे रहे. I'll tell you why.
जी.
Because we are mentally conditioned to hear and believe only what comes from the left. The moment you say, I'm coming from the right, it is tainted with racism, colonialism, and slavery.
जी. जी.
You cannot get rid of 600 years of colonial rule by saying, okay, I'm right wing. Then you are a part of the क्या कहते हैं, collaborator. Left को पकड़ के रखे साथ में, use कर.
I'm with you. I know you are there too.
Take care.
Until next time, Tarek, thank you.
Please.
Stay healthy, stay happy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Khuda
Bye.
Hafiz. Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, please. Namaste.
Bye. Namaste.
So, thank you so much, Pramodji, for moderating this wonderful session. We have, I'm just